Hello everyone, my name is Nikhil from General Understanding, and today we will be reviewing everything you need to know, mostly about human geography and the first humans to live on Earth. So, today in this video we will be covering the first humans, early civilizations, and early innovations or inventions, like the wheel, which we're all familiar with. So, back in the day, there were many different types of early humans. The most known one was were the Homo sapiens. They were one of the latest generations of humans, most developed in brain wise and most developed in body wise and mentally. So most of the early humans originated from Africa and migrated using land bridges, which don't exist anymore due to the rising of sea levels. And nowadays, though we don't see much of the land bridges, though we do see some proof. And they also traveled by water sometimes, and this period was called the Great Migration because these humans were trying to move towards more suitable climates and or chase after their food sources. So as you can see, the green areas are the migration range of the Homo erectus, a type of early human, and the migration of the Homo neanderthalensis. I don't know how to pronounce it, but Neanderthals. They were mainly in Europe. The Homo erectus were mainly in Africa and part of South Asia. And possible land routes. Some leaded west to other parts of Africa 100,000 years ago, and some led into Europe, others led into Asia, and even Siberia, and eventually North America and South America. Those were the longest migrations. And the timeline for each early human. So the Australopithecus was about 4 million years ago, and the name Australopithecus means southern ape, which tells us that these human-like apes were probably from eastern or southern Africa. Lucy is a famous Australopithecus hominid. She was discovered in 1974 and changed the way scientists looked at evolution of humankind. So, these early humans had opposable thumbs, like all the characteristics that we have, but she used sticks and stones to dig or break open food. So you can tell that, like, by looking at this, that not many of the early humans had tools until the Stone Age era. And these were the first to ever live. Like, they were the least developed mentally and physically. And Homo habilis was about 2 million years ago. And Homo habilis means able man. This short hominid lived in East Africa and had a larger brain than the species of Australopithecus, the previous generation. And it was the first species to actually learn how to make stone tools and use them. A Homo erectus, or upright man, was a much older or younger generation of the habilis, and it was kind of an evolution, and they were the first to walk upright, and the legs looked more like a human, and they lost a lot of chest hair. Like, they were beginning to develop into more of a human-like body. About 500,000 years ago, Homo erectus learned to make fire, and this was by using friction from two rocks or two sticks and rubbing them together and causing friction. Friction causes heat, causing fire, and creating a spark. This helped for hunting, cooking, and like keeping warm most most of them didn't have very good clothing, so they needed a heat source in colder climates. And this is why the Homo erectus were probably the first to leave Africa, as Africa is very warm. And Homo sapiens, the Neanderthals of Homo sapiens were about 400,000 years ago. And Homo sapien means wise man, and it was a new species of human that quickly became the main species. So we're mostly based off of the Homo sapiens. They made tools from stones, animal bones, and horns. With these tools, they developed new farming and hunting techniques, and they had large brains and small jaws. Their limbs were even longer and straighter than those of Homo erectus, and closer to what we look like today. There are two kinds of Homo sapiens, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens sapiens. So Homo sapiens sapiens are more recent, 200,000 years, and it means wise man. They first appeared in Africa, then spread out around the world about 100,000 years ago, and these are mainly what we are based off of, the Homo sapiens sapiens. And they're technically our I'd like to say youngest early human ancestor, and they may have moved only 2 or 3 miles in an entire generation. So you can tell that like they weren't really into moving all that much. This is why they were one of the first to develop farming techniques. So, early innovations, the Stone Age. So, the earliest humans were part of the Paleolithic era, or the Old Stone Age. During this era, not only were memorable inventions like the wheel and fire made, but also everyday tools that we use, or even musical instruments. So, spears like these were made out of, the spears like that you see on the screen were made out of flint or hard stones that could really cause damage if hit with the large enough amount of force. They would use it to fight or hunt, and they would make like other hammers to break open food. And the bow and arrow were also made with wood and string. Harpoons and fish hooks of bone to catch fish and other sea animals were also used during this era. And baskets to carry food, and rope from vines twisted together. They were used to make carrying things to other places more convenient. And art also saw a revolution here, kind of. And small statues from stone and ivory were made as a show of art and decoration. And bone flutes were made out of the bones of animals, as you can infer from the name. They were one of the first musical instruments to ever be made. And most of the Paleolithic people were hunters and gatherers, meaning they were nomad, so they never stood really in one place. They kept moving as their food source kept migrating to preferable climates, and that's how they basically lived. They had temporary structures to live in, and like they changed location based on season. So let's say summer is like, so let's say you have a animal that is suited to the warmer climates, so they migrate to the southern hemisphere when it's winter in the northern, because it's summer in the southern when it is winter in the northern, and so vice versa. which is why these nomads need to follow it, or else they lose their only source of food. early civilizations develop. So this is called the Neolithic era, and during the Neolithic era, which saw the agricultural revolution, people learned to farm, and selective breeding was a huge milestone, because now they could keep animals in one place and they could domesticate them and use their resources, like a sheep's wool or a cow's leather or milk, etc. So these helped the humans move on from the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, and allowed them to convert to a sedentary lifestyle, or staying in one place. And this allowed a lot of development in society, because now they could without a problem focus on more development and less on getting a stable food source. And so they saw early government and economies. Governments were developed, like they were leading bodies to help regulate trade and other aspects of humanity in these new villages. And villages grew into towns and cities, which sometimes had walls for protections. And barter was a huge form of making profits. So bartering isn't really about making money. It's about like you give bread, they give you milk. It's kind of like that. And it was one of the most used trading techniques back in the day, back in the Neolithic era. And this was a huge step for humans, because now they could get other goods from other people without having to get everything themselves. So they grew to depend on each other more, and this led to a lot of governments being made, like democracies. And the first democracy was in ancient Greece, and there were also many governments that were like very well made. And soon these towns grew to a very great size, and their divine rights were based on the divine rights. Many monarchs claimed the throne, basically, because they were inheriting the throne. So monarchy was one of the most common, but there were also democracies, and humans grew to just hunting food, from just hunting food to growing towns and cities. And that's basically how early humans led us to where we were today. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell for notifications on more general understanding videos. Thank you.